Welcome to Miamian podcast. Today I have a super special guest, Cecilia Slesnick. I've been practicing your last name as I told you like 2 seconds ago.
I love it. I love it.
So, Cecilia, you are here to talk to us about the COVID Chronicles.
Yes.
Which is so cool.
It is such a labor of love. And if you had told me on April 1st of 2020 that I would be here still doing it, I would have thought that that's a little bonkers, but here we are. And I have just completely committed myself to continuing the project. And I think it's just become such a nice outlet for me in the thick of it. So when I started the COVID Chronicles, it was April 1st, 2020. So it was day 19 of the lockdown.
Right.
And at that point, there were so many unanswered questions. How long it was going to last, what this all was going to look like, what would navigating things be like. And being that the only people I was seeing in person was my immediate family.
Right.
It also allowed me to have conversations with people outside of my home because it started with my painting live on Facebook. Mm-hmm. So it was so fun to be able to have friends chime in and have a conversation.
Right.
And when I first started, I wasn't using a tripod. I legit was balancing my phone on some glasses and It was funny.
You were improvising.
I was improvising. I was using what I had, I was getting creative with it. And but nowadays, I have a tripod and I don't do the entire session live because I know that obviously when we were in the lockdown, people had a lot of kind of space to fill during the day. Once they were done with work, there was a lot to do. And so I tried to go on around lunchtime so that if people weren't going out to lunch, obviously.
Right.
So I figured, well, here's a nice thing for you to do during our lunch break.
Yeah,
like
something positive and relaxing.
Yeah. And so today we are 7 books in. So this is the stack of all of the books.
I love this.
And this is the one that we're on right now. So that's why there's still white space. And this is the one that we started with. So this was day one. Day one was just a very intricate page. Safer at home was the message of the day. And I had always wanted to do a 2-page spread, but had just never given myself the time to do it. When you look at my sketchbooks before, they're always just like small little things. So this really allowed me to work in a different scale. And during the full lockdown, everything was very
beautiful.
Very detailed, very intricate. This would be like 2 hours of my day. Nowadays, I maybe paint for about 15 minutes.
Right.
It's simpler, but I'm still doing it. And actually, I did a very intricate one 2 days ago for my niece's 15th birthday, and she's a big Harry Potter fan, and her middle name is Rose. And if you're a Harry Potter fan or have a Harry Potter fan in your life, you may have done the Sorting Hat app. So turns out she's Slytherin. And
me too.
Oh, really? So she's
I've
Slytherin.
never met a fellow one in the wild.
She is a Slytherin, and so for her birthday,
I love her. She must be fabulous.
She's a cool kid. So I did a snake and roses for her for her birthday.
I saw that. Yes.
Yeah. So that was for
I
Olivia
love it
Rose.
even more now that I know the story behind it.
And I didn't do a message with yesterday's with this one 2 days ago, but every day has a message.
Yeah.
And so it's part art project, part art journal, and just a little bit of how I feel that day or what might be on my mind or something that might be going on in the community. There was a page for Surfside the morning after, things leading up to the election without politicizing it. Like I had pages dedicated to just, remembering to vote.
Right.
And when we actually got, unfortunately, when we actually got COVID, there were personal tallies of, because they tell you, okay, well, it's 10 days and then the 14 days. And, and we really felt like we wanted to get retested and not just kind of go back out into the wild. So I had the calendars, and then I always try to look at the positive side of things. And so we actually got COVID over the holiday break in December.
Ouch.
So the good thing about it was that the kids, because all four of us got it. So
at the same time,
my husband and my two children, we were able to quarantine together. We didn't have to worry about school for the kids. We didn't have to worry about work too much, because I feel like those 2 weeks every year are kind of when people pause a lot anyhow. So work-wise, so I for a living, because unless somebody wants to sponsor me, I don't have anyone that pays me to paint, other than my commissions. But I'm a realtor, and I work in our family's firm, and so it was also really nice that the agents that I had deals working with, like, they knew I had it, so they were also very gracious about that. But it was a good time. In essence, in theory, if you look at it in hindsight, it was a good time to have it. But I did the actual 12 days of Christmas also, so that took up a chunk. But so I always try to have fun with it and get creative with it. And Pinterest is a big source of the quotes. So one of my friends is a psychologist, and the other day she said, "Oh, I love this one." I said, "Well, I can't take credit for it. It's not my quote." And, and sometimes on Pinterest, it's other artists illustrating quotes. And so they don't source the quote. So if I don't source it, it's because I don't know the source. But every night before I go to bed, I kind of just go on there and see what's going to spark something for the next day potentially. And we go from there. Sometimes the kids give me requests. Hey, can you do this or that? So it's been a fun project. And today will be day 466 consecutive.
Amazing. That's amazing. I think I've expressed to you already how much I love what you're doing, but specifically because you took what I would say has been like the darkest time of our generation, right? And you made something so positive out of it, and something that everybody can enjoy. It wasn't just for you. You extended it to a community, and I absolutely love that.
Well, thank you. I think that it was also just something for my own mental health as well. I think that those first few weeks in the lockdown, part of the unknown was, how do you restructure your day? And how does this look? Because for those of us who don't have the conventional 9-to-5 office scenario, there were certain drivers that all of a sudden went away, right? Like, there was no longer having to get the kids to school because they would roll out of bed and put on a school uniform shirt if that's all they wanted to wear, and show up on camera. Having to pre-pack lunches became something that we didn't have to do. So it did allow me to have something to look forward to and to kind of help pace the day. And it's been so nice just to get the feedback as well from friends who are like, "Oh my gosh, I love this one," or "Can I buy a print of this one?" And I always tell them, yes, whatever one you like, I can put it on canvas for you. I can recreate it on a separate paper, because one of the things that I refuse to do is to dismantle the project.
Yeah, no, please don't.
Like, I want to keep the books intact. They're
such a treasure.
There are 7 of them right now. And I think that when you and I spoke, I said, these are an heirloom. Like, I don't know what kid's going to get this, but
100%.
One of my 2 kids is going to get it, and they're going to like it, and they're going to keep it forever.
Yes.
So it's been fun in that regard. And the biggest question that I get is, when are you going to stop? When is it going to end? Like, and I think that the definition of the COVID pandemic is, it's a very personal definition.
Right.
I think if you statistically look at the global numbers, like we're still in it. Like we still have a pandemic, whether,
It looks like it's going to be a while.
It looks like it's going to be a while. So I think that for me, I'm not going to feel like out of the woods until my kids are fully vaccinated.
Yeah.
Like I still have to worry about where I take them, when I take them, making sure that they have their masks on. And, and I still mask even though I'm fully vaccinated and I have the antibodies in addition to that. But so I think that for me potentially is going to be a nice kind of like but who knows, like that day may come and I might feel like, wait,
yeah, you're
I
not
still
ready
love
yet.
this. Yeah. But maybe that's when a second project is born. Something, post COVID.
Yes, I was just going to say that.
So yes, because every day is not about COVID. Every day is just a positive message as much as possible. And sometimes it's disbelief. Like there was one day, I think it may be in book 1 or 2, that it was Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. And that's how I wrote it. I wrote out Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. And then my friends who have military backgrounds were like, that's funny. And then other people were like, what is that? I don't understand. And I was like, well, it's like the military alphabet. So Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. Think about those first 3 letters. And like, oh, okay. So there's a play on words, which is something that I've always done with my art. So I brought a couple of my canvases to kind of show that I've always done that. I've always liked to have a play on words. So I've always have had an affinity for playing with words, playing with phrases. And so in 2008, I noticed that Books and Books was turning over their gallery that they have at the Coral Gables store over like every month and a half or so. And I had a professional relationship with them, having worked, at the time I was still working in the museum world. And I approached them. I said, hey, how do you solicit artists to, and they're like, oh, do you want to do it? And I said yes. And the great thing about that gallery is that one of my favorite kind of literary spaces in Miami is the children's section of the Coral Gables Books and Books store. Like, it just makes me happy. I love the color.
Yes,
I love
special.
how vibrant it feels. I love how I feel like it's a space that sparks curiosity, which is so important for kids. And so I did the pie series. I did the Miami alphabet, and I went back and did another show there, and I did the foods, and I did the mermaids. So so the pie series was a play on words, and it's up there. That is one of them. So the idea is, like, I was thinking about all these different types of pies, right? So I was thinking about all these pies: pumpkin pie, apple pie, and then that one, which is pecan pie.
I love it.
And then the food series was same thing, just a play. Like, how would you illustrate these really popular things? So this bottom canvas, it says super sugar and then a carton of milk. Well, that's breakfast. It's cereal. And a friend of mine bought one of my favorite pieces from that show, which was a jar of peanut butter holding hands with a jellyfish. Peanut butter and jelly. So I've always enjoyed that kind of play on words, and the Miami alphabet was very, very similar. I actually kept most of that because I felt like, at that time I was pregnant with my daughter, who's going to be 11, And I did this whole series, and so A was for alligator and B was for banyan, because I was also trying to think of things that weren't too
Right.
common. And S was for Stiltsville. And I remember like going and asking friends, oh my gosh, like I'm stumped on this one letter. Like what do I do for X? Someone was like, oh, just do palm trees, like cross. And I was like, oh, I guess I could do that. Like palm trees, X marks the
That's
spot.
such a good
Sure.
idea.
So that was a fun series. So I've always have really enjoyed that kind of caricaturistic and whimsical side of it.
Your art is very fun, I have to say. It's super colorful and fun and just uplifting. Like you can't look at it and not smile. It's impossible.
Thank you.
I love that. Would you consider turning some of these from the COVID Chronicles into like a show like that?
I would. I mean, I would
That would
I would
be
love
so fun.
I would
Hint, books and books. We're ready for another one.
I would love I think when all is said and done, which is why it really does need to have an end, right? In that sense, because I would love to do something with it.
Yes.
Whether, so right now, COVID Chronicles lives digitally on 2 separate platforms. So there's a Facebook page, which is COVID Chronicles, an illustrated survival guide is what it's called on Facebook. And on that one, you can see a large number of the lives. So you can go back and watch those old ones. I also sometimes will do a speed paint. So it's a time-lapse video of me painting part of the page. Those live on there. And then all of the chronology of the series is on there, divided up by book. So you can start with book 1 and work your way to book 7, flipping through and looking at them. And then the other digital platform that they have is on Instagram. And the handle for that is at covidchronicles.illustrated. Covidchronicles.illustrated is that one. And it was coming up with the name actually for the project came after I had a conversation with this really talented author. His name is Jeff Lazarus, and he's a friend of a friend. And she said to me, you need to talk to Jeff, because Jeff writes, but he also has another career path. And I think it would be really interesting for you to talk to someone who has 2 separate career paths, but has this creative outlet that's, really, and Jeff writes, he's a published author. Because ideally, I'm such a pen and paper girl that ideally I would love for them to be like a picture book.
Yes.
So that's
it would translate so well.
It would translate really well.
Yes.
And I
could just see it like a big coffee table book.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
Really big, because at this point, right, we're like 400 something pages into it. So that's another reason why I know that like there has to kind of be an end of life to it, whether it's volume 1, volume 2, maybe volume 1 is books 1 through 3 or something.
Right.
But that's another part of the rationale, is because I would love to see them published as a collection. And I also kind of like the idea of them having like a digital flip book version of it as well that could live online, so that if you're not a collector of books, or not everybody is as much of a maximalist as I am. Some people are minimalist. And so because of that, I know that could be another nice way, is for there to be a COVID Chronicles kind of, whether it's a landing on my website or it has its own, but it was living under the umbrella of the CSD studio, which is what I've called my studio work for almost 20 years now. I've called it the CSD studio. And, but then I spoke with Jeff, and he said, if you want this to have its own life, it needs to have its own life.
Right.
So that's when I decided to break it away from the umbrella of the studio. Well, not break it away from the umbrella, but I wanted to give it its own platform so that it could
Right.
shine on its own and not get mixed in with other things. And so I do get, kind of funny questions sometimes from people like, how many Instagram accounts do you have? I was like, well, I have my private one, which is only for my friends, and that's where I
Right.
post like my kids and that personal stuff. And then I have my real estate one, which is CSD Homes, Miami. And then I have CSD Studio and Style, which is kind of all of my studio work mixed
Right.
in with just, I've always been told that I have kind of a creative sense of style. So that's
You
in there.
do.
Um, and then there's the COVID Chronicles. Um, and I also run our real estate firm's social media, but that's a totally different thing. So it's been really nice to kind of see it all together. So when you
Right.
go to the Instagram account for example, for COVID Chronicles, you can see it in total chronological order mixed in with time lapse video
Yeah.
as well. So
Which
it's,
is how I found you, by the way.
yeah,
And
isn't
then I
that so funny that
realized that
yeah,
we have friends in common and we've crossed paths for a while now, but I found you through COVID Chronicles. Isn't that crazy?
I love it. And
Yeah.
that's so nice to me because I will say that like, I don't do it for the followership. I don't do
Yeah.
it for the likes. I really just do it because it's a passion project of mine.
Right.
Obviously, I'd love to have additional followership and more likes, but that's not why I'm doing it. So when people say, "Oh, yeah, I've been following," I realize like, "Oh, not some people just stumble upon it and
Yeah.
and they may not put two and two together because my profile picture on it is I'm wearing a mask, I've got my glasses on,
Yeah.
and so it's not like I'm really, really identifiable.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, it's me. So, but it is so great, and we've done little bits of traveling, and I just the other nice thing is that I use the size sketchbook that I use, which it's a 5x7, because I can take
It's
it with me. It's
portable.
so portable, and so I just stick everything into my materials bag, and everything that I use is
Yeah.
in here, and I can just shove that into my backpack
Right.
when we go and visit friends around the state, and it's with me, and I have yet to miss a day. I remember there was one day I was so tired and I don't even know what had been going on, and I was just on the precipice of just maybe not doing it that day, and my husband was like, if you did it when we had COVID and you were
I
like in
know.
bed, why aren't you going to do it? And his voice is constantly in my head. So
That's support right there.
just
That's
this the even
awesome.
notion of it, like we were out of town um last week, and we had gone to visit a friends. We were staying with friends in Orlando, and by the time that we had gotten to Orlando and we'd gone straight to dinner, and by the time we got back to our friend's house, it was 11:45. And I remember my husband was like, everyone unpack the car. You go paint. Go, go,
Oh
go. And I was
my
like, okay. And
goodness.
I just ran to the house
I
and
love
sat
that.
at his dining room table and whipped it out. And um, we had been at Bok Tower earlier that day in Lake Wales. And if anyone ever goes if you've never done a Florida road trip, first of all, I highly
You're
recommend
missing
it.
out.
Our state, as kooky as it is chock full of just
Yeah.
the prettiest and coolest places. And Bok Tower is one of my favorite places. And if you're a member of Fairchild, you actually get free reciprocal membership admission.
I did not know that.
So on our little Florida road trip, we visited not one but two botanical gardens. Thank you, Fairchild membership. So we went to Bok Tower, and they have this beautiful children's garden. And Bok Tower was a private home. Mr. Bach was the owner, and he built this Carillion Tower like they have at the University of Florida and at Duke University in the middle of the property. And every hour on the hour, the bells have a concert. And so we were in the children's garden, and they have this art making area. And I did this drawing. I tend to always like gravitate to drawing. If I don't know what to draw, I'm like, oh, I'm going to do some leaves and some flowers.
Yeah.
Like I always just love doing leaves and flowers. And so I did that. So so fast forward like 9 hours later, we get to our friend's house. It's 11:45. And I decided to use, instead of my straight watercolor paints, I was going to use my watercolor pens, which I hadn't used in a while. And those are really fun. And if you experiment with watercolor and you've never used a watercolor pen, I highly recommend it. I like to use the Pentel. So I did the whole thing in the watercolor pen marker, and then I took my brush to it, and at like 11:58 was posting it and was like, oh my gosh,
2 minutes,
like
2 minutes.
it was under the radar. So I have yet to miss a day in,
That's
well
so
over
incredible.
450 days. And, and today, for example, I still have to do work after
Right.
we're done this afternoon. And so I've already thought about like, okay, so I've got to do this at this time and this at this time. So sometime between here and dinner, like I will sit down and paint. And I even thought about doing it before the podcast. So I already tacked out the date because I always write the date that it is. So I write down, so this is how the page starts. It starts blank.
Right.
And in the upper corner, I write what day it is. And this is
So 484.
So 484 is how many days since
you
the
started.
lockdown, not since we started.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the lockdown started on March 12th.
Yes.
The project starts on April 1st.
Got
So
it.
below day 484, I write P466. That's today. And that's project day
I see.
466. And then the actual
date.
date, 7/9/2021. So you'll have to check the Instagram or the Facebook to see what this page will hold. I still don't know. We'll see what it will hold.
We'll see what
We'll see what
inspires
it'll
you.
hold. Yeah.
It's so amazing that you haven't missed a day. And I feel like if you had missed that one day that you felt like, oh, I don't want to do it, maybe that would have trickled into more days. And then you would have really...
Right. It's like everything in life is a snowball effect,
Yes.
right? And so I think I will say, other than work, because I take my work very, very seriously, and rearing children. But even then, you want to go hide in a closet for at least 30 minutes a day. I will say I've never committed myself to a project like this. So
Yeah.
it's also, for me, it's been a personal test of like longevity with something, which I think to myself, goodness, if I'd gone to the gym 466 days in a row, it would be so different, So so it is also a little bit of a, pat on the back for me, like, goodness, like
It's incredible.
I've kept it going, but I think I keep it going because I love it so much. And it makes me so happy, and I love sharing it. And, and I just, a friend of mine was telling me maybe about a year ago, he said to me, imagine like your kids years and years and years from now, your kids are going to be able to pick up these notebooks, and
Yeah.
they'll have not just their personal memories of everything that happened in 2020 and beyond at this point, because it was 2020 at that point when we had the conversation, but your account to it too. And it'll be such an interesting kind of visceral thing that they potentially will experience, remembering their memories, remembering you sitting at the desk doing it, all of your things. And my husband, when he's not working, he plays guitar. And so sometimes when you listen live, you'll hear him playing in the background. Sometimes he'll come in and, Abbott and Costello it and just start kind of like talking to people like, oh, she doesn't know what she's doing today. So it is such a slice into kind of what happens in the house, which is fun. I have to also say, I think one of the funniest things is we have a 2-year-old golden retriever. So when I started the Chronicles, she was just over a year old. And every day, and this is no joke, and if you ever catch me doing it live, you will see this. It is hysterical. The minute that I say, okay, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of this ongoing project, which started on April 1st of last year. I'll be back at some point tomorrow. And until then, be happy, be healthy, be safe, and be smart. The minute that I start that, if she is near me, she starts to bark.
No.
Because at the beginning, I used to then take the notebook outside to photograph and post.
So she knows.
So she used to know, like, oh, we're going to go outside, right? And to this day, that dog, even though I sit there and I tell her, no, I'm not going outside, she knows that I'm about to end. Most of the time these days, I wrap up on Facebook while I'm still in the midst of it. And I hop over to Instagram to give Instagram a little bit of a live time as well. Right. So I'm like, no, I'm not done yet, But yes, like 9 out of 10 times you will hear my dog barking because she's like, oh, we're done.
So it really is a family affair.
It is a full-blown family affair.
That's
like you'll
amazing.
Hear kids coming in like, oh, what's happening for dinner? And then the other one will be like, no, she's painting. We can't
leave her alone.
Leave her alone, And I'm just like, oh, go away. So it's a good thing that the camera is on my hands and not on my face, because like half the time I'm like mouthing to people like, go, stop. I'm almost done. Give me 5 minutes. So,
but I think it's so important that during such a crazy time, you were able to model for your kids how to positively and in a healthy way respond to stress, because they could have seen you, crying in a corner, which I'm sure we all did. I know I did at some point.
I mean, I think that it is really fantastic, I think, as a society, how much more transparent we've become about mental health.
Yes.
And I always tell my kids, it's okay to feel whatever feeling you're feeling.
Yeah.
You don't always have to be happy.
Right.
And if you're feeling sad, it's okay to feel sad. If you're feeling scared, if you're feeling whatever it is that you're feeling. And when this all started to unfold, I had a kindergartner and a third grader.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot of big emotion for little people. So I did try to channel that for them. I mean, every day we try to channel creative outlets for them. Last summer, I'm not going to say obviously because I know that some people did, but last summer we opted to not send them to camps and keep them home. And I built out a schedule for them, which this year there are a few weeks when they're not in camp, and I've adopted the same schedule. And in that schedule, every day from 3 to 4 o'clock was art making. And so thank you, Amazon. Yeah. Yes. I'm just doing my part to make sure that, Jeff Bezos makes it to the moon. Because
I think we're all guilty of that.
all are guilty of that. Unfortunately,
we can't help it.
At some point I was like, okay, I'm going to start ordering from like local places because this is out of control. But I remember
once you get to know your Amazon delivery person by first name, you kind of know you got to ease up a little bit.
Well, here's the thing. I ordered like all of these art supplies for them because selfishly I was like, well, I can use some of this too, So I bought all these canvases and I got them like their own sets of acrylic paints and lots of beading and things to make sun catchers with. I just name it and I probably like bought it, like pom-poms and pipe cleaners and all this stuff, right? Molding clay. I mean, it was all over the place. And but it's funny that you say that because we have we don't have things delivered to our house. Like we have things delivered to our local UPS store on Ponce. And it used to be that, and Don, my husband, always used it for his business because he preferred to have things go there. Well, then I started sending all of my packages there. And now I'm the one that like every day Like I love the guys at the
Yeah.
UPS store. Shout out to Jason and the guys
Yes.
at the Ponce UPS store. It's down the street from school. So like every day and every day I leave and I'm like, see you tomorrow. Bye. But I think it's also just because I think also in the midst of it, like, Jerry's Artorama wasn't delivering, it was harder. It was tough to get stuff. And
Yeah.
so, and I'm a big Jerry's Artorama fangirl.
Yes.
And so once I realized like, oh man, like I should just go ahead and order a few of these books. So I remember like ordering like 4 at once and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to order 4 of these. And then they stopped carrying the paint that I use. So there's this Miami artist, and he is an old coworker of mine's brother, and his name is Juan Travieso, and he's an incredibly gifted artist. He's done campaign work for Perrier and does murals, not just in Wynwood, but globally. Just incredible guy. Anyway, so I remember one time he was coming in to do a workshop when I worked at a museum with his sister. And I said, I know that you work with X, Y, and Z, but I've seen you also do da, 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 da. And so he was like, oh yeah, try these pens. And then I was following another artist and I was like, oh, I really love the pigmentation that what watercolors are you using? Like, oh, we use Pelican watercolor. So I use Pelican watercolor and I love it. I love Pelican watercolor. This was the set that I was using when I started the Chronicles.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like pretty worn down.
Mm.
It still has some stuff. And one of my viewers who's a friend from a friend from church was like, Ceci,
you need
do you are you getting another one? I was like, yeah. And I had a backup. So I was like, I've got a backup somewhere. Like I need to find it. Next thing I knew, there was like a delivery at my door. Like she had ordered me a new set, and it's the set that I use now. But I still go back to this one. I still go back to this one now that I'm like, you know what? I still have a little bit of red on the old one.
You can still squeeze some stuff out of there.
I can still squeeze some stuff out of here, and I've got special mixes. So I use those guys. I love the Pelican watercolors, and then I use, and this everybody's always ask me, oh, what are those pens that you use? I'm like, well, it's not a pen, it's a brush. So it's called a Pentel Aqua brush. And I've been using this thing for years, long before the Chronicles. And I discovered these because if you're an artist, you know that your supplies take up a lot of space.
Yeah.
And it can get very messy. And I don't have a formal studio. My studio is my work desk. So I kind of clear off my laptop and I set up the studio. And what I love about these guys is that the cavity it's an empty cavity that you fill with water. So you don't need to have a separate receptacle for your water to clean your brushes with. One time, I think this is what sparked the conversation with us. You and I were at our mutual friend Pia's house.
Yes.
And I came in to do water slide stuff. And either you or Pia asked, like, what happened to your hand? And I was like, oh, I just finished painting because I don't blot my brush on paper. I just scrub it on my hand. It's gross, I know. But so because I'm using watercolor brushes like that, I have to use waterproof pens.
Yeah.
And so I use an assortment of different things. Micron pens, I love these. And then these two are like I feel like these are like my high school loves.
I was just going to say that.
These I learned to use when I was at Gables High in IB Art Research. And they were like, we had to write our IB Art Research papers in these sketchbooks by hand. by hand. And because they were shipped to Ireland, it had to be done with waterproof pen because God forbid, like a year and a half of your work gets destroyed.
No.
Can you imagine? No. I mean, especially
no.
at like 18, you're like, my life is ruined. Like,
yes.
So I remember Miss Greenaway, rest in peace. She was the best. She inspired me to major in art history. She introduced us to the Uniball pens. So I have the Uniball pens that I love. They're waterproof.
Such memories.
Such great memories, those Uniball pens. And then, again, a few months ago, I was at Jerry's Artorama, and I said to the woman who was working there, I said, I've got this thing, and I need to find like more waterproof pens, like not just the Microns, because I really need like a thick one.
Yeah.
Not a Sharpie. Sharpies bleed.
And the Microns tend to lose their tip.
They do lose their tip. Yeah. And I mean, they're great. Don't get me wrong. This is no diss. Even the Accurates like lose their.
Yeah.
So they introduced me to what has become one of my new favorites, which is the Super Black pen.
That one.
And that's what it's called.
The
Super Black. And it's a set. And it comes with different tips. And the sell point for me was that it had a thick brush tip.
Right.
So it's like,
so that's what you do all your detailing with.
I do all of my detailing with these or the Uniballs or the Microns, Super Black, and then the Pelican watercolor. And then
that's so cool.
I will use a Pentel watercolor pencil sometimes. And I know this bag is like the Mary Poppins bag. It's like stuff just keeps coming out of it. And the Pentel.
Yes, the brush pens.
The brush pens.
I love those.
So these are watercolor pens, and then the Pentel watercolor pencil, which I like using these guys as well. So it all fits into my little green bag, and there have even been a few times where my son wants to go to the park, and I'm like, you know what? I'll take my book, and we'll do this thing plein air today. I'll go live from the park. Why not?
That's awesome.
It's not the easiest, but it gets done.
Would you say watercolor is your favorite medium to work with?
Yes. I mean, I think that acrylic on canvas, I love acrylic on canvas. When I started drawing, I can't remember a time when I didn't draw. It was your obvious, right? Pen and pencil. And then I graduated to pen and ink. Pen and ink with some marker with color pencil. You think about like your regular just childhood art supplies, right?
Your Crayolas.
Your Crayolas, right? It's whatever was at Publix on sale, right? Your Crayolas. And I think that when I was in college, I took, so other than public school art classes, I've never been formally trained. And when I got to college, I decided I wanted to take an oil painting class because I'd never done it before.
So intimidating.
And just the amount of everything that, like, we were stretching our own canvas and we were using our own gesso on the canvas. And, you have to have all the, like, the paint thinners and all of this stuff. And so I did it for a semester and I enjoyed it. But I always felt like it was not the right medium for my style.
I see. And
like, I remember we had to do a self-portrait. And mind you, like, this wasn't art majors in these classes with me. It was, novice painters as well. But some, I think if you're taking that kind of class, it's because you have a level of interest. And so there's some skill set there, right? So it wasn't like stick figures. No one was doing stick figures. It wasn't me in there. It wasn't stick figures. But I remember, like, I finished my self-portrait and I was like, this doesn't look like everybody else's. And then shortly thereafter, I started experimenting with acrylic paint. And I always would draw whatever I was painting onto the canvas first with pencil. And it wasn't until and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, the acrylic on the canvas. And then shortly after college, when I started dating my now husband, I was dabbling with a little canvas, and I decided to use Sharpie on the paint after it had set. And I remember looking at it and realizing this is it. This is what
You found your style.
I found it, because at that point it felt like I was drawing with the paint. The way that I had been, the way I had grown up. You know, you think about the way that we draw, and you draw with, you'll draw with like a ballpoint pen as a kid, and then you'll color that in with color pencil. So I found a way, and it may seem silly because it took so long, but I found a way to translate that, not even rudimentary technique, but that early technique onto, I grew it up.
Right. You made it your own.
I made it my own. And so that's what this is. I mean, it's Sharpie with acrylic. And so when I paint on canvas, it's always with acrylic. I don't have any oil. I have a little bit of oil paint. It probably is just rotted at this point. It's been so long. But on the day-to-day, like even when I do test, when I get commission work, because I do get a few commissions a year for canvases. And when I do, I always color test, and I always run my color tests in watercolor, because I just want to get a feel for what it's going to look like. And one of my dearest friends in college, her aunt is an incredibly talented watercolor artist. And I remember telling her how much I enjoyed working with watercolor at the time. And she said, watercolor is the most difficult of all the mediums because you can't fix it.
Yeah.
You're stuck.
Right.
She's like, there are several little ways that you can fix it, but that's it. So you're very vulnerable. And I'd never had thought about that. And so when I'm live and I'm painting, I always tell people I'm not out for perfection. I don't want this to be like, I'm not working on the Mona Lisa, but, so I'm open to mistakes. And I think that, there's ways to work around the mistakes. So even when I'm painting, I'm like, I'll say I'll sit there and I'm narrating as I'm painting. I'm like, okay, I'm using a thin brush because I'm trying to be careful as I'm going around this. I'm like, oh, oops, I just bled. Oh, well, I bled. Okay, here we go. And I think that that's just with everything in life, right? You just have to kind of roll with the punches and learn how to let go of things. And I have, in my age, I've become a firm believer in everything happening for a reason. And I think that kind of letting go of that has really helped just a lot with everything. And I think that that's why, that's part of what I try to talk about in the Chronicles, is just kind of, it, as cliche as it may sound, it is what it is. And you just have to be, you have to be okay to be surprised.
Absolutely. Yeah. You have a choice in how you handle it.
Right.
Right. And you have to make the best choice that's going to keep you whole and healthy.
Yep. Yep. One of my best friends has this pair of cats, and it's a mother-daughter cat duo.
Oh, that's so cute.
And the mother is just the sweetest cat, and she's so social, and she'll come up to you and snuggle with you, and the daughter is very sheepish, and you never see her. Like, it's a thing. They're like, oh, have you seen Cookie? Is Cookie anywhere? And so I remember telling my daughter, I was like, listen, you can go through life one of two ways. You can go through life like Birdie and make the most of it and get to know as many people as you can and learn from them and be nice and accommodating. Right. Or you can go through life like Cookie and hide in a corner and just be like, I'm not going to deal with that. So, you can go through life like Birdie or Cookie. Take your pick.
Oh my God. I that may be your inspiration for today.
Oh, yeah.
Hint.
Birdie or Cookie.
Birdie or Cookie. I think that's a good one.
And they're pretty. They are pretty. Briley's cats are really pretty.
I'm not going to lie. I would like to see that one at some point.
There we go.
I wanted to ask you, You touched upon, how you're a career woman and you have all these other hats that you balance. How do you make sure you still get to live out this creative side? Because you're an artist in every sense of the word.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the nice thing is that I think the Chronicles have um, forced me to create space for it, to create time for it, right? You always hear people say, like, you have to make time for the things that matter to you, for the thing, and I think some things we do selflessly and it happens. So I think that the Chronicles have really helped with that, making sure that I'm taking, it can be as little as 5 minutes or as much as 30 minutes. And in the beginning, it was an hour, sometimes more. And I think that is why, I think that you don't have to hang in a museum or a gallery to be an artist. And that's something that took me a long time to really accept. I come from a family with a lot of artists. One of my cousins he's an artist. Like, he's full blown an artist, and it's incredible the work that he does. And a few great aunts who are beautiful oil painters, and another couple of my cousins who have really great style to their work, and they're not artists necessarily by that's all that they do, but there's an artistic side to it. And I think that we all have and maybe as women we kind of walk around with a little bit of feeling like imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the Chronicles has also been a journey for me to recognize that that I am an artist. Like, I remember, and I incorporate my art into my real estate as well. Like, when my clients buy a house, if it's their first home, I'll paint a portrait for them and frame it and give it to them as a gift. And when I have clients whose home I'm selling, I'll paint a picture of the house that I've just sold for them and frame it and give it to them as a gift. So I think that both sides complement each other. And I remember when I left the museum world and my kids' school asked me to do career day. And at that time, I was studying for my real estate license. My mother-in-law for years and years and years kept asking me, "Oh, just come work for us. You'd be so good. Come work for us. Oh, you're so good with people, and you're so creative, like you." And and it came to a point where I was like, I have these little kids, and I'm not spending a lot of time with them because I'm working sometimes 6 or 7 days a week, and
That's
it was
tough.
a lot. And
the guilt, right? That comes
right,
with
and just
that.
like all of that, and like missing things, right? Like not being able to say, yeah, I'm gonna go do career day or whatever. And so it was the first career day, and my daughter was like, "Well, you can come in and talk about your art. You're an artist." And I was like, yeah, okay, let's do that.
Crazy how sometimes kids
Yeah.
are so wise and they just know what to say.
Mm-hmm. And you're talking about, like, I'd had gallery shows and I'd had paid commissions. I mean,
But it took her seeing
but I was
you
like,
that
oh,
way for you to be able to see yourself
right.
that way.
And then
That's so beautiful.
the Chronicles also have really, really helped with that because I am practicing every day. When I was in college, I was the editorial cartoonist for our school daily newspaper. And that was the first time I got paid to paint. Well, I was drawing. I wasn't painting. But it was the first time that I got paid for my art. Every Friday, I would get a paycheck for my art. And I was exciting. Like, that's so cool. Like, that's so cool. Yeah. And, and even though I didn't full-fledged take it on, like, when I was working in the museum field for almost 20 years, I was always the one who had like these strong relationships with the artists because I could always say, well, I'm an artist too.
You understood.
Like I got it. And I would tell them like I'm not like your level, like I'm not doing the things you're doing. but I'm an artist too. And I get it. And even still to this day, like I have a client who's an artist and I'm trying to help find studio space for her right now. And I was like, I love what you do. I get it. I was like, I'm an artist too. And they recently started following me like, oh, I love what you're doing. And I was like, thank you so much. And, but I think that, it's our immediate circle. Sometimes are our biggest fans before we are. And so, but that's why I always say I do the Chronicles as a passion project. And I have just found a way to respectfully give myself time to dedicate to it. And because there's inspiration all around every day.
It's true. It's true. I think it's so important, especially, I mean, not just for women, but yes, for women, because we wear so many hats. Mm-hmm. And so I know I'm guilty of putting the things that kind of fulfill me at the very bottom because, well, that's not necessary. I have kids to feed and the house needs to be a certain way and I have all these other roles. But yeah, looking at your post every day remind me, no, I need to pay attention to those little things that.
And I mean, I think you also provide an incredible outlet. Nobody, the Miami Lit this is your passion project. And this is your,
my little baby.
This is your baby. And I think that, it's important for us as working women with families to have these little babies that are not human.
Yes, that have nothing to do with anybody else.
That keep us going. And it's that little selfish thing that is for us. And that's why I think that whenever the COVID Chronicles kind of comes to an end, I truly feel like I just have this visceral feeling that I will have kind of a different incarnation of a daily painting project, whatever it might be. It will probably at that point gravitate over to CSD Studio and Style, and it'll be the art journal, because I think that this has become so much a part of me that I love it. I love it so very much. And it's fun just having these conversations like with you. Like, for sure, I'm going to do Birdie and Cookie today. Yay! Based on the conversation,
I can't wait to see that. I can't wait.
And then who knows what tomorrow will bring, and that's always kind of the fun thing. It's like in life, right? You never know what tomorrow's going to bring.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. I don't want to see it end. I'm kind of a little selfish, but I'm so excited to see what you would come up with next.
Well, I think at the rate that kids under 12 are going to get vaccinated, I'll be doing this through at least the fall, right? I mean, that's what it kind of looks like. It's proven I should go to Jerry's Artorama and order another 3 books or something.
I think so. I have just a few more questions.
Sure. I mean, I could sit here and do this all day.
Oh, thank you. What advice do you have for somebody that could benefit from art making, but wouldn't say they're like me, like I could barely do stick figures? How do you think people like me should start? So
it's funny that you asked that because you'll hear me say a lot like, well, this friend and that friend and this friend. So a friend of mine, and her name is Selma, and I adore Selma. She has this incredible spirit and spunk to her, and she and her husband have this like everlasting super sweet love story, and they their dogs are their fur babies, and they're adorable. And it was probably sometime either in the fall or late in the summer, and she asked me, what are your materials that you're using? Because I really think I'd like to try something. And I said, of course. So I told her, okay, well, my sketchbook, I got it Jerry's Artorama. It's a Reflections 5x7, but they come in different sizes. I like the 5x7 because it's portable, right, and it's got the little like closey strap. And I use these are my Pentel Aqua brush pens. I like them because I can travel with them. And she and her husband do a lot of traveling. And then the Pelican, I like that style of watercolor because it's also very portable friendly.
Right.
It's not the tubes. It's like the brick. And I told her, listen, just if all you want to do is circles on a page, then do circles on a page. There's no right or wrong or good or
That's
bad.
true.
It's, I think there's a quote, and I can't remember who said it, and I'm going to butcher it for sure. But it basically is like, everyone is born an artist until they grow up.
Wait,
Something like that.
Isn't that Picasso?
It may be.
Think so.
I think yeah.
So.
And I think that that's true. I think that we all are. It's when you start to feel like, oh, well, I'm not good at this, so I'm not going to do it.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So I told her, I was like, just do whatever feels happy and comfortable for you. And so she went out. She got the materials, and we're friends, and so we obviously follow each other on Instagram. And she posted a couple of like her things, and it was so nice. And then there's this other woman that who's a friend of the family, and her husband used to be a museum director that I worked for many moons ago, and I didn't know that she painted now and then, and I saw her. We started talking about, because she's also a realtor, and so we started talking about some property during the pandemic. And I said to her, "Oh my gosh, I noticed that you've been painting." And she was like, "Yeah, I saw you dip into your paintbrushes again and decided why not." And I think that that's it, right? Like, why not? Why not give it a try?
Yeah.
Why not give it a go? I remember maybe it was about 6 years ago now, 5 years ago now, a friend, again, another friend of mine, started posting pictures of these ceramics. And I said, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know that you were doing pottery." And she said, "You know what? I signed up for a class over at the Anhinga studio, and I love it." And I was like, that's fantastic. So I don't think you're ever too old to pick up a hobby.
That's true.
I don't think I think those are the things that keep us going and that keep us motivated. The day that you stop learning is the day that you die.
Yes.
Right? So you got to keep growing and learning. So I would say whoever wanted to try to start something, I think that pen and paper is the most accessible and easiest way to do it. And whether you go on YouTube and enter like learn how to draw a flower, or you just look at a picture and give it your best, I would say just remember that anything you draw can be broken down into simple shapes, from circles, squares, ovals, triangles. And just look at it and from that perspective, and not from it has to be perfect and realistic.
Yes.
My artwork is not perfect. It's not realistic. It's mine. It's my style. And every artist has their own style, my glasses that I'm wearing were done. Warby Parker did these in collaboration with the Robert Rauschenberg Foundation. And when sometimes when you look at artists like Rauschenberg or Rothko, all these, sometimes people look at their art and they're like, "What is that?" And it's because that's their style.
Yeah.
And so anyone is capable of doing it. And, and it's all about how it makes you feel. And for me, it's a stress reliever. I know that I feel like I'm not done for the day until I've done my painting for the day.
That's amazing. I love that. That's such sound advice. I think you're right. Yeah. Just let go of all the crazy ideas that you can do it and just give it a go.
Just give it a go.
Who cares?
Exactly.
Yeah. And if you didn't like it, well, you can just put it in the trash.
Or don't put it in the trash. Don't put it in the trash.
Listen to the expert. Don't put it in the trash. I'm sure it'll get better.
My daughter this week, they didn't have camp, and there was one day, I had gotten them all these different projects. And so I said, "Well, what do you want to do today? Do you want to do some decoupage, or do you want to paint on canvas?" And she opted to paint on canvas. And I thought it was adorable. And at the end of it, she was like, "Oh, I really don't like this." And I said, "Listen, constructive criticism, I will tell you that if you're ever going to paint on canvas, draw it out in pencil first. draw it out in pencil first, and then paint. I have never, and I probably will never, just take paint straight to a canvas. I said, but it's lovely because you made it. So it doesn't matter that the stem is quote unquote too thick on your mushroom that you painted.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. But if it's going to bother you, then here's a solution for the future. It's a learning
We really
lesson.
are our worst critics.
We really are.
We are so mean to ourselves. Yeah, I do that all the time.
Yeah.
I don't paint, but and you and I figured and I'm so happy to meet somebody real life that's obsessed with notebooks and pens and all sorts of stationery goodies.
I have an unfortunate pile.
And I don't paint, but I journal a lot. And sometimes I'll just be writing and I'm like, God, this is so crooked. I just want to tear it off and start again. But then I refuse to tear pages from a bound notebook.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of saves me. But you're right. We really need to just ease up and let it be.
Yeah. And I think that, the pen and paper thing for me is, I see how college students these days and even high school students are taking notes with their laptops.
Yes.
And I always retained everything so much better when I wrote it.
Well, it's been proven.
And
There's
it's
so many
right.
studies that show when you put pen to paper, something happens.
Right, because
something clicks.
You're the one making that connection.
Yeah.
So I have a graveyard of used notebooks, and I have notebooks waiting in the ranks. When we were in Orlando last week, one of my favorite stationery stores, and it's not even technically, it's not just a stationery store, so I shouldn't call it that. But for those of you who know, and most people are probably familiar without even knowing that they're familiar with it, but there's this company called Rifle Paper Company. Yes. And Rifle Paper, the Prince, right? Oof. And so Anna Bond, who's a graduate of Rollins College in Winter Park, she's, a talented artist. She's a gifted artist. And she started painting, and the paintings turned into prints, and then those prints turned onto all this other stuff. So every time that we're in Orlando, we spend half a day in Winter Park because it's so charming. And we always, because I ask, and actually at this point, I don't even have to ask. We always go to Rifle.
Now.
We go to Rifle Paper, and we always go into the sale room. And this time there were journals in the sale room floor. And I was like, yes. Score. And my daughter was like, oh, can I get one? I was like, of course. Start them young.
Yes.
But I used to journal when I was a little girl. I'm an only child. So I journaled a lot. And I will say, I think that my, I used to have composition books that I would draw in, and then I had my journals. And when I first bought my first sketchbook, legit sketchbook, came in 7th grade when our art teacher required us to have a sketchbook. And it was a concept that was foreign to me, completely foreign to me. And I remember it was, we had to go to Rex Art back when it was Rex Art. There's a Chipotle there now.
Yeah.
On Douglas and Coral Way. And I remember that the sketchbook was a black and white. It looked like a composition book, and it was a sketchbook. And I loved it. And that's what got me hooked onto having a sketchbook. And then I got my own sketchbook for my personal use, because I was like, oh, wait, hold on. And I will say that my first sketchbooks were really art journals.
Yeah.
I think that this project, the COVID Chronicles, has become my adult art journal. But when you look at my sketchbooks from when I was 11, not 10, but 12, 13 years old, which I still have them. They were art journal. it was journaling the way that
Yeah.
people are journaling these days. I would do collages, and it was
Yes, the
song
magazine
lyrics and the
cutouts.
magazine cutouts. Like I
Yes.
remember my mom wanted to paint the house, and I remember going into Home Depot and just getting like all the color paint
Yes,
samples, the
the cards.
cards. And I was like, ooh, these are going to look so cool in my sketchbook. And they had like laminate samples too. And I was like, yes. So I have like, those books are so heavy
Yeah.
because they're like
You-
collages and like writings. And so, so I think that is journaling. I said this to you. And I'll say it to you again. You are an artist because journaling it's such an outlet.
It is.
It really is such an outlet. And there are so many incredible resources now for journaling artists. Washi tape was not a thing in 1992. It is now.
No,
And
we had to use, I remember making these like patterns with that. What was that tape called? The
like
super shiny.
yeah, so there's like the
And
duct
it came in
tape.
like duct tape. It came in like only three colors or something like that.
I also remember taking just regular tape and drawing on it with Sharpie and being like, oh, this is so cool. But that was like the American, I'm sure that there were like super cool girls in Japan using washi tape in 1992. Not us.
We had
like
duct tape.
We had like duct tape and like 3M, right?
And the jelly rolls.
And the jelly rolls. Yeah.
That's
and
it.
just, so there used to be, I feel like there used to be, so I close to where I live, there used to be two accessible, and by accessible, I mean close, office supply stores. There was a Staples and there was an Office Depot. So there was a Staples on Douglas and Coral Way, and there was the Office Depot on Ponce, which today is a Target, which is totes cool by me, but
it's a little dangerous.
It was an Office
cool.
Depot. And so last week when we were in Orlando, we were meeting my husband's like distant family that lives in Orlando, and we see them every time that we're in town because they're lovely, lovely, lovely. And we always go to this place called the Peach Valley Cafe or something, and it's this cute little diner, and there are a couple throughout the state. And when we pulled up, there was an Office Depot next door, and we had like 20 minutes to kill. And I said to Dawn, I'm going into Office Depot because
Don't bother me.
It's been so long since I've been to a brick and mortar office supply store.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, but you have so many pens. And I was like, shut your trap. I'm going into Office Depot. If you guys want to tag along, that's fine. But I'm going to go get lost in like the pen aisle for a while. And I know that and my friend Briley with the cats is another pen and paper aficionado. And I'll always ask her like, hey, because she always finds the most obscure pens out there. And so every now and then I'll ask her like, oh, what pen are you using these days? What's your current favorite pen? And she'll tell me, and I'll look it up and order it and try it. And most of the time I'm like, oh yeah, this is amazing. And so I walked into Office Depot and I was like, oh, look, my current favorite pens are on sale. It's like, do I need another dozen? No. Would I like another dozen? Well, of course. So like I walked out of Office Depot with like pens, and like my daughter like wanted colored pencils, and I was like, sure. And then like my son liked this like pencil pouch, and I was like, okay, like I'm in a generous mood. We're in Office Depot. Let's do this.
Let's go wild.
Let's go wild, like I'm going to spend $20. It's going to be great. Everyone's going to be so happy. And we walked into the restaurant and they're like, you went to Office Depot? And I was like, yeah, I have a problem with pens. Like I just can't ever have enough.
Yep.
If you're a pen aficionado, you'll also know that your favorite pen may not be around forever. Like
it's true.
At some point, so you got to stock up,
Yeah.
You got to stock up. So yeah, so like I, these, the Uniballs, they've been around since at least 1995. And so those are like workhorses, but my current favorite, like just everyday pen is Sharpie has come out with this like needle point. Well, Pentel has a needle point retractable that I love, and Sharpie has come out with this very fine tip gel roller that I love.
I'm gonna have to try that.
It's super
haven't.
cool. I think I have one. I think I have it on my. I usually carry.
Okay, we're gonna have to take that for a test drive.
Yeah, I'll let you take that thing for a test drive. If you like it, you can keep it because I've obviously have like 3 dozen of them. But so I think that it all kind of just it is all a creative outlet. Like I've had people who have said to me, I love sitting next to you at meetings because your notes are so colorful. And when I was taking the real estate course, how many years ago now, I'm not a very good test taker. And so I was so paranoid about my note taking because I wanted to do well on the test. And I was like, okay, if my notes are good, like I'm going to come back to them easily for studying and whatever. So I bought myself this like arsenal. Like I got like these retractable Papermate pens that had just come out that I really liked.
Was it the Joy something?
Yes,
those become a classic.
Those were great. So I had those, and then I had some like standard markers because I like to change the thickness of what I'm writing with, so that like if there's a header, it's in a thicker font, then whatever. Anyways, there's a method. There's a method to my madness
for sure.
And I remember like I was sitting there and like clicking and like writing, and I would write for a while, and then I would click and switch pens, and I remember this woman turned around in real estate class and was like, "Excuse me.
Oh no.
Can you stop making so much noise?"
Oh no.
And I looked at her and I was like, "I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to be legit." All I was doing was like every 10 minutes, I would click my pen and switch to a different pen. So it was just like a regular click sound. And you're in a room of like 50 people. She eventually left the class. She didn't finish the course.
Well, with that attitude.
But it was really funny because to this day, every time, I will say like ever since that day, every time I click a pen, I'm like, well, I'm pissing somebody off now. But I do. I love, that's why I say, I think that, journaling is just as much, art is not only made with pens and brushes. Art is not only made in a studio. Art can be made any day, every day,
Good point.
So,
that's so true.
Yeah.
So before I let you go, because you're a busy lady, I wanted to ask you, as a native Miamian, what's your favorite part about living here? Because here, as you mentioned, this is my little baby, and it's our hope to help start changing the perception of our city.
Yeah.
We're more than just flip-flops and party town.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to us, as a lot of people are figuring out as they decide to make Florida and Miami their home.
Yes. I mean, we have had, did you know, so here's a real estate fun fact for you. Did you know that for every one person leaving Florida, there are 5 coming in?
Nice.
Now that statistic is like, it's probably about 3 months old now.
So now it's probably higher, right?
Well, I don't know. I honestly have to look at it. I really do have to look at it, but I will say this, and I say this a lot to clients that are relocating into Miami. Miami's not for everybody, but once you find your niche, it's a wonderful place to be.
Yeah.
I think that my favorite space, having grown up here and having left and lived elsewhere. I mean, I lived in Texas, I lived in New York, and I came back. And I viscerally came back after college, like when the college safety bubble was burst in Texas, and I started working in Texas, and I was like, wait, what?
What's happening?
¿Qué pasó? No entiendo esto. I was like, it's time for me to come home. And I just like sent out, it's a funny story. I just like sent my resume out to every single museum in Miami and was like, maybe someone will hire me. And someone did. Thank you. Thank you, Miami Children's Museum. You brought me home. But my favorite thing in Miami is there's this one drive that I like to do. And anytime that nowadays that I'm showing property in Palmetto Bay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm so happy because I force myself to go out of the way to do my favorite drive. So my favorite drive is South Bayshore in Coconut Grove, all the way south onto Ingram Highway, down Ingram Highway to Lejeune, to Old Cutler, to the Deering Estate.
You're hitting like so many major points.
Like that drive to me aesthetically is just, it's old Miami.
Yes.
It's the lush
Yeah.
green banyan canopy. There is a painting actually that I did in one of the books. I was driving down to Palmetto Bay to show clients. Actually, I was driving down to Cutler Bay to show clients some townhouses, and it was a very, very rainy day, like just stereotypical summer rain. And off on the side, there's this one part of Old Cutler that starts to turn as you're entering kind of into the Palmetto Bay, out of Pinecrest into Palmetto Bay. And growing wild, at least that's what it looks like to me, there is this massive like brush, and it has pockets of bougainvillea
Mm-hmm.
growing in it as well. And it turned into my painting for the day because I was like, oh my gosh, look how pretty that is.
I saw that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, look at how pretty that is. So there's those aspects of Miami, just like the flora and the fauna, right? That we forget, like
yeah.
that we forget is here and is not normal, right? Like when you go out to the Everglades on a cold day, purposefully, because that's when the alligators are going to be out,
Yeah.
because they have to sun themselves to stay warm. Like those things, I love those things. I think the thing that I like the most about Miami, though, and this is the main reason I came back, is because as a Latina, I knew I wanted my kids, and mind you, this is me at like 22, like I wasn't even like dating anyone at the time, but I knew like when I, and if I have the chance to start a family, I want my kids to feel free to speak Spanish and to understand it. And I knew I wanted that for them. And there's just something really special about how, and I know a lot of people say Miami's, it's not a melting pot. It's like a tossed salad, which is true, but I think that there's it's one of the few pockets really where like you wonder like, oh, are they going to speak to me in English or in Spanish?
Yeah.
We just yesterday morning, we went to Latin America for breakfast because my husband, who's like the biggest gringo, loves Latin America breakfast. And he always likes to order in Spanish, which, let me preface this by saying, he does not speak Spanish.
That's so funny.
So he's always like, buenos dias. And he's like, huevo frito, and papas fritas, and café cubano. And they're always asking him like, oh, café con leche? And he's like, no. Café cubano.
He wants the
good
stuff.
He wants and he makes it too. And I will say he makes a good Cuban coffee. He does.
Amazing.
He makes a good.
I cannot drink that. I'm like the only Cuban that
can't.
I think can. It makes me like so jittery.
I like it. I do like it. And he makes it strong. So we went yesterday and the kids have like, it had been like over a year since they'd been in there, and they've changed the menu a little bit at the Latin America. And now, they also have like French toast and pancakes.
Oh, I didn't know
So I was like,
that.
oh, okay. So I was like, hey, I said to my son, I was like, hey, if you don't want eggs, like they actually have pancakes.
Yeah.
My kids, if you gave them, and I remember being like I have such vivid memories of going to, there was this grocery store. There's a Dollar General there today on 8th Street. There was this grocery store called El Imperial
Yes.
when I was little. And I never stepped foot for personal reasons into a Publix until I was 16. Like we always did our grocery shopping at El Imperial. And I remember we would walk into El Imperial and I would be sitting in the grocery cart and my mom would hand me a loaf of Cuban bread. We are not Cuban. She would hand me a loaf of Cuban bread and like half of it would be gone by the time that we
you
paid.
walked out.
Yeah. Because I would just sit there like, so my kids, like, I would like as a responsible adult, like it's funny, like the things you're like, I can't believe like they let me do that. Like, I can't believe she let me do that. But if I gave my kids.
Maybe that was like the phone of the day. Instead of giving you the phone, she gave you bread.
Yeah, so here's the bread. Yeah, I'm like, okay,
relax.
Carbs. It started it all. It's where it all started. But my son was like, I want pancakes and Cuban toast, and I was like, okay. And he had like a pancake, and but his tostada was gone.
Oh, so good.
And I'm like, listen, and like we're so bad that we will, and if I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but we salt our tostada.
Ooh,
it's so good
with the melted butter.
I didn't say it was good for me. I just said it was good.
No, it's that. Oh man, I haven't had a tostada in so long.
Well, you should go. It's so good. Oof. And when we were visiting after Orlando, we went to Vero Beach to visit friends of ours, my husband's childhood best friend, and we all went to high school together at Gables. And he and his wife, who were high school sweethearts, are they're married and they had their kids early in life, and so they're basically empty nesters. And so here we are in like our early mid 40s, and we're dealing with this like cluster, right? And then here they are in their mid 40s with like adult children, right? And we're like,
oh my
goodness. Look at that. That's a rare bird. So, but it was funny because she was like, oh, do you want coffee? And I was like, I usually can't drink coffee in the morning because it upsets my stomach. And then I realized it's because I'm drinking like hard, straight up Cuban coffee. And then I saw the way she was making it, and like she was making it with like maple syrup and oat milk.
Ooh.
And in one of those like fancy carafe things. And I was like, oh, and I'm not a daily coffee drinker at all. And I was like, sure. So she gave me the coffee and I was like, this is so good. This is so good. And then when we came home and, Don made me the coffee again because he was like, oh, do you want coffee? I was like, yeah, I'll have coffee. And then I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. Like, this is like lightning fuel. This isn't like, so I think that, so what that all boils down to is that I think that that's what I love about Miami is that there's an opportunity to tap into these different cultures. Like one of my best friends is, well, your friend, and one of my best friends, Pia, is from Argentina. And, we're all watching Euro Cup and Copa America right now. And she was like, oh, do you want to come on Saturday and watch the Argentina play Brazil in the final? And like, I still haven't responded to her because I feel like 75% of me wants to go. Mm-hmm. And the other 25% of me knows that she's going to be screaming at the screen the whole time. And like I always just feel bad. But I think that that's one of the things that I love is just the fact that like, there's all of that. There is all of that. So as crazy as Miami can be, as horrible as the traffic is, it's home, and it's just a very special place. And I think that the creative economy and the creative community in Miami continues to mature and grow. And I think it's with help from outlets like yours that allows people to connect and to realize who is in their backyard. Like, I don't know if you know Atomic. He's a graffiti artist. He does all the oranges. Mm-hmm. And so I met Atomic years ago when he was doing a museum mural. And so I started following him on Instagram. And when I saw that he started following me, I was like, oh my gosh, like,
this is exciting.
Wow, this is exciting. And like still to this day, like when he like comments on like my art blogging and stuff, I'm like, I had such a good day, like a top, so I think like that those opportunities for connectivity are so important. And, it's still a young city, and that's, goes through a lot of shifts and a lot of changes. And I think there are a lot of naysayers. But there's something really special about this place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to agree.
Yeah.
I have to agree. 100%. Well, Cecilia, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
this was so
you
much
so
fun.
much. I had so much fun. And, feel free to follow me on Instagram and Facebook, COVID Chronicles.
If you're watching us on YouTube,
yes,
everything will be in our description.
It will. If you're listening,
you are listening to us,
just
then
look it up.
Make sure to come over and check out all of Cecilia's amazing artwork.
Yeah,
I can't say
thank
enough.
you. Yeah, and it's all
it
there.
It makes me so happy every day when you post and it comes up on my feed. I'm like, oh, I love this. It's so much fun. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
And I love the new studio space.
Yes,
it's
which
so
you helped
pretty.
Find.
I did.
So thank you for that too.
I tell you, I'm a woman of many hats.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you're talented in so many areas, and we are lucky to have you.
And here are these guys for you to try out. See, I'm a pusher. I'm a pen pusher. I'm like, try these guys out.
Look at this color. Oh
Isn't it so pretty? Blue's my favorite
like
color.
Lavender, blue periwinkle, like all
it's
wrapped
so pretty.
up into one.
It's so pretty. If you like it, keep it.
I'm not gonna say no.
No, I know. That's why I'm offering. I'm not saying it with a. Oh, she's gonna say no. I'm gonna put it. Yeah.
Ooh,
and it's in my fun like packed. I have so many pen pouches because that's the other thing, like, right?
Okay, so we're gonna be like.
There's so many like
lifetime friends.
I mean,
because
it's just,
I have a pouch problem too.
Mm-hmm.
Like
the pouch problem
bad.
is fed by the pen problem. The pen problem is fed by the journal problem, right? It's a Simba would say it's the circle of life. It just keeps feeding, right? Yes. So, well, thank you for having me.
No,
and
as I
say every day when I sign off, be happy, be healthy, be safe, and be smart.
And there's no better, I can't top that. So thank you guys, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, Jenny.